Francesca, the elements in your work are drawn from many sources, including early Italian Christian art and faith, as well as from pre-Christian and pagan mythologies, from autobiography, symbolism, and from the present. Elements that were originally an integral part of a specific cultural consciousness and logic. Is there a system of organization and logic that you consciously use when recombining these different visual elements? And how does this process of organization differ from the narrative as a method of communication?
Yes, there is a method. I mean, I imagine my way of thinking is the method. The way just the way I think and the way I see and perceive things all over. I mean, in the daily life, the way I remember, the way I select things to remember. I don't have a good conversation because I really do forget 90% of what I see and what I hear about, and I do remember only this very, very narrow collection of things which I find extremely meaningful in a way or the other. Analogy, and coincidences in time between information which comes from different sources at the same time, common places in conversations and in common places in belief, in conversation, in behavior. The body is the mirror of the environment, and that's all there is. I mean, there's nothing else.
You talk about analogy and metaphor. I mean, does the body become a metaphor for saying things about the world as you perceive it?
A metaphor, as far as I believe, is connected with a dichotomy, with two things. But analogy is connected with a train of things, and it's very important, if you want to get in touch with what I think, to always to think in terms of multiplicity and not of duality. So in that sense, I'm sympathetic with the pagan way of thinking, where the monotheistic idea arises from the fact that everywhere there is, that there are millions of gods. I mean, everywhere there are gods, and so there is actually one, but this idea arises from many and not from two. And analogy, has to do with something which appears in place of something else, which appears in place of something else, and the way knowledge works is like that. I mean, knowledge is an explanation in place of another explanation, in place of another. So paintings are part of this train of explanation.
From the idea of the duality of thought almost conceals the fact that there is a much wider range of possibilities when it comes to human experience and human expression.
It's very important that whatever you're thinking about, you understand the relativity of it and the mobility of it. And it's very important to establish a common feeling about how things flow continuously, how explanation substitute one the other, and so how the valuable thinking nowadays is all the thinking which is done around these terms of changing, of adjusting, of adjusting to a direction more than building a model of an order which we want to achieve or something like that, which is, I think, the origin of all the horrible things which are happening today.
That's an interesting idea, the idea of the model, building a model which is to do with multiplicity. And it means, I suppose, ultimately that enormous range of alternative ideas can enter art. Do you think of it in that way?
It means what art always meant. I mean, art was always a tool in a certain process of learning, and was a good tool for a good learning, meaning, and when I mean good, I mean that you do not, if you have children, you do not teach to a child to hurt himself. You teach a child to minimize the pain, whatever it does, and the child learns that from the mother through a form of love, which is a form of eroticism too. And I think there are and learning goes with. Eroticism is the medium of learning, of good learning, and the arts have been always that. Have been an erotic medium for learning, and this is what is missing very much now more than ever, because now learning goes somehow around without this medium.
Do you think that that's alternative to the academic concept of learning, which uses the printed word and the spoken word, which implies a sort of a logic of thought, which perhaps isn't very close to the way the mind works, but also is not very close to the way in which an artist works?
If somebody is out of his mind, it is not enough you talk to him. You have to embrace him and touch him. And so the artist thinking is a kind of minoritarian thinking, analogous to whatever else is around. The difference is that it's minoritarian, and it tells about other possibilities which are not the one which are considered around as the right one. But I don't say they are the right one. I just say that it's important that there is more than one possibility, and one carry along as many as one can, and then that is all we can do. There is nothing else we can do than trying to imagine many, many different ways and adjust to them. And I don't know if the artist way is right and the other one is not right, and I don't think that necessarily the one which wins is right. I think it's possible that an entire collectivity makes a complete mistake in the way of learning and thinking and moving and deciding.
Is your starting point for a painting, such as the 14 stations and those being shown here, the Midnight Sun Cycle, is a starting point for them an idea about a single fragment of experience that has no form other than in your mind? Or is it a response to an episode or a story or narrative that existed before you decided to make the painting?
No, anything which comes from the past and connects with what I do is because of a coincidence, and because of shows the value of the tradition of art. The fact that you can start from your autobiography and never go wrong in a way. You always bump in a collection of images which is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 years old, means that there is a basic knowledge and learning going on, and that you are into it, and that is something very simple, and that you can relate to it just through your daily life, and whatever narrative is before what you do is just a confirmation, and I can understand it only after I've done my narrative, and then I can understand the old one, the meaning of the old one. Otherwise I can't. So there is never really a quotation, but there are this continuous coincidence going on.
Why is it necessary to actually make a series of paintings then based on an overall theme?
In both collections there is such a multiplicity of suggestions and phenomena going on that one title does better justice to them all, without giving too much of a direction to your reaction. You have more possibilities to read in them what you need, without being too much concerned about one use of them. On the other hand, I don't like pictures. They have no name. They're like person with no name. You can't imagine that they must have a name. And in this case, a name for all is better, because it leaves each single painting more space to express itself.
When you call a series of paintings the 14 stations, it preconditions to some extent the way people are going to look at that series of paintings, given the historical interest there has been amongst artists of painting the crucifixions and stations of the cross. Are you using this expectation that people come to the paintings with positively or for a particular purpose?
14 stations means traveling. Stations reminds you of traveling. 14 stations remind you of the time we are traveling in, which is the Christian time. To find that you can go around and the travel you are making is a circular one is the surprise, because having the title you wait for a hierarchical trip from a worse situation to a better one, and you cannot find that happening in the paintings. They all bring you one to the other and back, and you can't really find the turning point or any real starting point or an end to it. And so you can imagine that without I mean, we don't have to change our ears like the French Revolutionary did when they tried. There have been such attempts here and then to change the calendar. So you can imagine that we don't need to change the calendar to be free from this horrible idea that there was only one good moment in the history of man, and was that year 1983 years ago. And you can imagine that year is still going on, and is this one.
In October 81 you had an exhibition here, and one of the rooms there were fresco paintings that were made in Rome, I believe, and in another room there were large paper paintings made in Madras, and now you've made a lot of oil paintings in New York. So you obviously see location as a very important factor in making your work.
Yes, because unfortunately not all over the world there is the liberality which permits to an artist to express the truth of the place, and the few people who have that opportunity of express that I mean, being one of the few people who have that opportunity, that luck to do that, I really feel I want to do that in more than one place. I don't love only the place I was born in. I love other places, and I can really think I can be an artist in the south of India and in New York and in Italy with the same intensity and curiosity.
Can you? I mean, I know each place you are, the relationship with that place will be different. But how do you go about establishing that relationship? What are the ingredients of the relationship? I know you use the materials that are related to the place, but are there any other factors that you attempt to make use of in your work? carried out in those
Well,
places?
it is really a matter of materials in the widest sense. So not only the materials you can work with in the manufacturing of the work, but the diet, the way you see it, the way you breathe, the expectation of the people around you, the light, the climate.
The works in the earlier exhibition that I mentioned were fairly subdued and quiet and interior in a sense, whereas the paintings both here and at the Whitechapel are very strident, gestural, expressionistic, and in a sense one could say they're linked to painting being made by younger artists in Italy, Germany and New York.
I'm not really interested in the fluctuation of taste, and in fact I let each collection of works of mine to belong to a totally different alternative connotation as far as taste goes. And it might be that one collection happens at the same, in a kind of very eccentric way, and nothing else around looks like that, and another one is less eccentric and looks, has a more formal aspect, and that's all it is.
Something else you've mentioned in the past, and it certainly comes over when one looks at these paintings, the desire to really make something out of a very almost dangerous basis. There are no, you talk about taste, there is no good taste. The paintings look as though they were really quite a battle to paint and to make work. It doesn't look as though they came about as a result of an easy sort of process. And I just wondered how important that was to you, to actually make problems for yourself when you're actually trying to get these things up onto the surface of the canvas.
Because it is not a given fact that a painting or object of art is necessary. So you have to find this necessity again and again, and nobody knows anything about the formal solutions of work, and you can't use any kind of stylistic frame to be sure of what you're doing. And everything which doesn't give you that impression that was done through a breakthrough, a very uneasy and narrow situation the artist puts himself, then that is no good. It's not good art. Paintings, it is really nice if paintings are pleasant, but you simply can't find out before you do them how pleasant they're going to be. And it is not, has not to be your point.
So it's important that formalism and style doesn't become a prop or become the subject of the painting. You're presumably much more interested in the content.
No, I wouldn't make a division between the two. I think the structure of the work is good when there is this tension between this enormous limit you put and this enormous passion you put that you want to get there anyway beyond that limit. And this is a machine, and you have to build it again and again, and it is something which the particularity of being a painter is that you are alone, and the moment there is a style of your own, it means you are not alone, and it means there is a group of people who are deciding for you, a group of people who have said yes. And then it's a kind of comfortable situation, but there is no magic in it, and there is no interest in it, and it's better to die than to have a style. I mean, that's the way to get a real style, is to die, but not to paint again in the same way you did before.
I wonder if we could talk about the painting on our left now that I believe the Tate Gallery will acquire. This painting that's white with 3 figures in the centre and a number of eyes juxtaposed around the surface between fairly thick white impasto. I think they're octagons.
2 blinded lovers, but only one of them is blinded, and the other one is just looking somewhere else. And I think we have 5 million pores in the skin, and they work like, for 2 blinded lovers, they work like 5 million eyes. And eyes in the shape of sailing boats in the Renaissance tradition, which is also medieval tradition, which is also late Roman tradition, which is the Grilli tradition, is the emblem tradition of this. They were almost like logos, like marks, and they were like, you could find a dolphin with an anchor, which was the emblem for Festina Lente, for this idea that you have to rush slowly, you have to run slowly, and all kind of paradoxical statements about knowledge. And so these eyes in the shape of sailing boats are in that tradition, and the image does have this kind of contradiction, because the sail gives you, I mean, the idea of the sailing boat gives you this idea of speed and mobility in direction. This is what the sails does, like the eyes do. And at the same time, the master of the boat pins the center of the eyes, so there is always also an image of blindness. Also, the sail is the same material as the cloth, which is on the eyes of the lover. And then there is a third person, which probably comes out of a formal problem, that the painting didn't look good with only 2 people, and there's a third one to fill it.
And again, there's a particular interest in skin here, human skin, which seems to be a predominant concern in a lot of works, and also eroticism between the 3 figures.
The skin as a surface broken by holes, and we do believe that through the holes we connect the interior space with the external space. And every tradition of knowledge, of knowledge about integrity, about unity, about reaching an unity between our feeling and what happens around us, starts with this recommendation to obstruct, that what is inside has to be kept inside, and what is outside has to be kept outside for a certain period. That is the starting of in every tradition all over the world, in every tradition of learning, there is this recommendation, or the opposite one, which is to let things flow, and to consider what you feel and what you see of the same importance, like 2 material phenomena which have the same reality and the same weight. And that has, like certain drugs can give you that impression that whatever your brain tells you is really as real as whatever happens outside, which is not usually the status we live in. Usually we are overwhelmed by the outside. I mean, it looks more real. We consider that real, and the inside as a kind of uncertain status of reality.
Just finally, these paintings were made in New York and Rome.
In New York and on the seaside in Italy, south of Naples.
Is there a distinction between the paintings made in either of those locations in the gallery here?
The major distinction runs through this painting and the one at the Whitechapel, because these one are done in the summertime and in the open air, and those are done in the wintertime and in the studio.
Oh. So these paintings were painted outside, out of doors?
Yes.
Where the light is at its maximum?
Yes. In the Whitechapel painting I was blinded by the darkness, and in this one I was blinded by the excess of light. And I wanted the colors to be burnt, because I don't know colors, I don't know the meaning of colors in the same way I know meaning of images. I can relate images to certain needs and idiosyncrasies and desires in daily life. I can't relate colors to that. I don't know how colors work. Well, I know about certain colors. I know about all the earths. I know about them because they are really what they are. They are materials, and there are certain colors. They look like if they must have a meaning, like yellow, or especially yellow and red. And I mean, actually, like the colors Mondrian was using, but in a way. It seems that it was the right thing to do, was what he did. I mean, to care about the meaning of those colors, because those colors, they really look like if they mean something. But I'm not a theosophist, and I don't know what they mean anymore. I kind of trust Mondrian, but no, I don't trust him enough to make, to be able to make a use of whatever he was thinking of.